Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Robbie. You are watching Geek Level Asian. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be doing a change of programming from our regular Toku, Power Rangers, Super Sentai content because the Netflix live-action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop has aired, and it has caused controversy among fans and the interwebs all over the place. And for me, being a huge Cowboy Bebop fan, I definitely checked it out. I watched all 10 episodes, and I figured I'd do a video about it. And before we go ahead and do this deep dive, because I have a lot of information and a lot of things to say, don't forget to like this video because it helps out the algorithm and helps other people see this video who might be interested in seeing this as well. Okay, so first of all, I want to lay out some foundational points first. I will not be saying anything derogatory about the actors themselves. They were cast for a reason, and I'm sure they were cast for good reasons. And you have to understand, and I like to make sure that we as an audience, especially for those watching this video, understand this. When actors sign up for a project, you have to understand that filmmaking is very much a director's medium, and what we're seeing, the finished product, is based on what the director wants, not the actor. Sometimes there are powers at large that maybe don't capture a performance the way that they had originally acted it out, or they're just being directed in a way that is someone else's vision, and it just doesn't set up the tone correctly, and we're going to be talking about tone a lot in this video. And hey, were there performances that probably could have been better? Yes, but that's anything. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about all the things that I thought were good and worked well for this live action adaptation. Some of the casting choices were spectacular. I'm gonna point some out. Jet, I feel like, was ripped straight from the anime. All of his scenes and all of the delivery of his lines in those scenes, I think, were very, very Jet. He did a really good job in playing that character that basically just keeps the beat throughout, which is funny because there's a lot of, jazz musical references in this show. He keeps the beat for the rest of the cast, being the person who has to, kind of ground everybody in reality and hunker them down. I thought Asimov and Katarina in the first episode, really great job. I mean, they looked exactly like the anime characters. The only thing that kind of didn't make sense to me was Katarina's accent, because in the anime, I think her last line is adios, which I think she has an English accent in this. They nailed Big Shot. Those two actors did a really great job. The next thing are the sets. Now, the first thing that I think about, if I had to make Cowboy Bebop, is a lot of this show takes place in outer space. So how are you gonna create these, worlds that don't actually exist? I think all of the shots outdoors when they were on different planets, that worked, but where the show really, really did a great job was the Bebop. The Bebop set looked spectacular. I loved it. The little area in the center where they all gather around and talk with the big leather yellow couch. I loved the deck, or the cockpit, whatever you want to call it, with all of the windows, just like in the show. Did a great job there. And speaking of ships, the Swordfish, Spike's ship, looked spectacular. You could tell they spent a lot of time making that look exactly like it's supposed to look. When I first saw John Cho in the Swordfish, I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing! Now, another thing, aside from the ships that I think they absolutely nailed, this is a character that I liked a lot, was Pierre Lefou. That was one of my favorite episodes when I first saw it. The intro to that episode is incredible because he's such a dangerous threat to Spike, and he's honestly just kind of scary. That actor not only nailed the maniacal, cackling, crazy laugh, but when they zoomed in on his eyes, it looked like the real anime character's eyes. I like how they explained why he's able to defy gravity. They actually showed that he has these boots. It kind of reminded me of the Super Mario Brothers movie where they're able to jump really high because they have the boots. But aside from that, I liked what they did there. Now, what they didn't do is they didn't do that incredible sequence, which is one of my favorite, I'll say, parts or episodes, scenes, sequences in all of Cowboy Bebop, is when they show how Pierre Lefou was basically created, and they have that crazy electronic music. Although they didn't do that entire sequence, which I didn't think that they were going to do, they referenced it and they showed short clips of it basically with an arpeggiating electronic melody. So I appreciated that. I thought that was cool. And of course, there's a ton of Easter eggs. Let's face it, guys, this show was made for nostalgic chaser freaks like you and I. One of them is in Big Shot when they're showing the list of bounty hunters and basically criminals. you see Cowboy Andy on there. And I didn't notice this in the show, but in the Netflix, like, kind of like behind the scenes, there's a shot of their refrigerator, and there's actually a picture of Stephen Bloom, who is Spike's voice actor, on the refrigerator. I didn't notice that. I gotta go back and see if I see that now. And overall, everybody, I mean, once you're like 3 to 5 episodes in, you do get stuck in the universe, and you kind of stop. I don't want to say stop. You don't compare it as much to the anime because you're getting used to the universe that they've created. So now let's talk about where there is room for opportunity and some things that, let's just say, choices that I didn't really understand, or things that I just think flat out didn't work at all. So we'll start very simple. Little choices that were made that I don't get. Faye curses like way too much. And listen, I'm fine with cursing. It's not like I have a problem with people swearing in television or in film, but like in The Sopranos, I get it. Here, there were scenes where it felt like it was just like, I'm gonna be using the word forced a lot, and I know that's like such a, maybe a general adjective to use, but there were times where she was just kind of like shouting curses, and it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Another choice that was either made that I don't get, or that they just didn't understand, was Spike's martial arts. Now, listen, I know that they looked into the martial artists that Spike is based off of, but if you watch the anime, the style was still very different. Spike definitely has some signature moves and ways that obviously he's animated in the anime, so he's gonna do things that defy gravity a little bit and don't make sense when it comes to, speed and timing, but at the same time, he definitely has some signature moves. One of them is his, like, Bruce Lee bounce, which I don't think he did at all. Maybe once further in the episodes. I think, like, in the last episode, he does it, like, a little bit. But that was, like, a part to who he was. It had to do with, like, kind of his confidence and his cockiness, which, again, is not in the show, and we're going to be talking about that later. Now, this is a creative choice from, like, a filmmaker's choice or the director's choice. There are so many Dutch angles in this show, and I cannot stand Dutch angles. If you don't know what that is, that's basically any shot, and you'll see a lot of them where the camera is just kind of tilted. It's very, in my opinion, a very outdated look. So now, in regard to the look, there's something that I noticed from, and this was before I even saw the show, and I saw like the sneak peek preview photos that they put out. The show doesn't look stylized enough to me, and if you're not familiar with what that is, many times it's the coloring of the show. The show looked, I think, a little bit too vibrant or a little too saturated, one or the other. And if you think things like that don't matter when it comes to the tonality of a show, look at something like Harry Potter and how those films evolved over time. In the first few movies, they were very warm and vibrant. There's a lot of reds and oranges in those movies. You do not see those colors when you get to like Half-Blood Prince and on. Everything is super desaturated. Everything is more almost black and white. It's like getting there. And it's done to portray a different time in these characters' lives where things are more serious and it creates a different mood. It does. So now this next one is super important because it's an overarching issue for the next few points that I'm gonna make. And that has to do with how the story unfolds to us. In the live action Cowboy Bebop, the audience is privy to information or has an omnipotence, if you will, that does not exist in the anime. And to me, it hurts the storyline. In the anime, when we meet Spike, we don't really know much about him other than he's a bounty hunter, he's cocky, he's confident, he's an incredible martial artist, and he's very good with firearms. But we don't know much about him, and that's the mystery of Spike Spiegel. What made his character so compelling, and the reason why we had a good time watching him, was getting to know who he is and learning more and more about him as the episodes went on, as his past life creeped into what we know of him now. And the magic behind why this was so important for the anime is because as Spike's story is unfolded and told to the audience, we're learning things at the same time as other characters in the show, like Jet and Faye. It's what made the mystery of Spike's life so profound. In this, we know everything about his backstory from the start, and it hurts the development of Spike's character, and it also creates a different character, and I'm gonna go into that in a sec, because that brings me to Julia and Vicious. We're introduced to Julia, Vicious, and the Syndicate literally in the first episode of the live action. which again takes the mystery completely out of it. I always saw the Syndicate as this like underground, almost secret organization that hides in the shadows, that everyone just kind of knows is dangerous. And with that, I always saw Vicous as this character that was this almost phantom of a character, this ghost-like character that you would only get a good glimpse of right before he killed you. And with Julia, I feel like it was so important. I know some people don't agree with this, but I feel like it was important to bring Julia later in the series because the whole first 3/4 of the anime, Spike is trying to run away from his past. He has established a new identity, and that's who we know. So that when his past starts creeping back into his new life and his past catches up with him, that's why, again, it's so profound. Because Jet and Faye are confused, the team doesn't understand, and that's why the fake eye conversation is so important. Because when Julia shows up in the anime, it's such an important turning point in Spike's life, and we're experiencing it like he is. We're feeling it with him. So bringing it back to the live action, since we know about Julia and we know about Vicous and we know about their love triangle so early, instead of establishing Spike's character and understanding him for 3/4 of the show, we get this sad, depressed, emo version of Spike. And don't get me wrong, like, as you watch the episodes, it definitely works for what they created, but I think we lost a lot in the storytelling. And I am honestly surprised at how much we got to learn about Julia and Vicous. Like, we got to know them, like, way too much. I didn't need to know everything about their lives. Like, I didn't need the omnipotence of Vicous and his daddy issues, because instead of this intimidating, haunting, katana-wielding murderer assassin, he turned into this self-entitled man-child who has violent temper tantrums. Basically, Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens. But in all seriousness, this next one is something that I was really hoping that they would keep from the anime, but if they tried it, I didn't see it, or it just wasn't executed correctly. And I think this is actually one of the most important things about Cowboy Bebop, and that's the dynamic of the tone of this show. Now, you may not have even noticed this the first time around, but something that Cowboy Bebop did particularly well was its ability to be fast-paced and action-packed, but also respect and understand the importance of stillness and silence. The anime was filled with all of these beautiful moments of B-roll shots that are now taking center stage, where characters would just be standing around. They didn't have to be saying anything. Their body language would be saying everything that needs to be said. And you would just hear that steel string guitar, and it would just create the mood. That doesn't really happen in this show, and it's something that they honestly probably could have done very easily, but they didn't do it. Instead, on the contrary, what the show was filled with were lines that I feel like were forced and the characters wouldn't actually say, or lines that real people in real life don't say out loud. So now, bringing it back to a design standpoint, I just wanted to touch upon, and I know this has been a sensitive topic online, but the costumes. And before you freak out, let me finish. This is not me complaining about Faye's costume not being as accurate as, let's say, Jet's or Spike's, or that she isn't showing more skin, XYZ. It's not about that. It's more about the small details on people's costumes, or their design, I should say. It's costumes and design. Let's talk about Jet's beard. Jet's beard, in certain shots, look fine, but most of the time just looks really funny. Now again, earlier in this video, I was complimenting everything that is Jet. Again, the actor did a great job. I loved his costume design. They killed it. His arm looks sick. He's got basically everything he needs to have. But his beard looks really fake. The hair is unnaturally straight. And in close-up shots, you can see the spots where it's basically glued on or adhered on, or however they did it. I feel, again, going back to the coloring, I feel like if they colored it and stylized it different, you wouldn't even see stuff like that. And don't get me started, I'm gonna talk about it, but don't get me started on Vicious's hair. Guys, I don't know how they went from this to this. I feel like they really didn't understand Vicious's character. I'm just gonna be honest. They just didn't really understand what made that character cool. Like, I wasn't gonna comment on the sword fighting. The sword fighting was not very good. But again, this is about the design. What is going on with his, like, kind of wavy, curly hair? He looks like he kind of had a perm done, or he's stepping out of the shower and his hair is still curly and we haven't given him a chance to actually straighten it yet. I think that if they just gave him straight, long hair, like he probably should have, it just would have looked better. So now guys, this brings me to my last point. I have to talk about Ed. And again, I want to be clear, this is not a knock to the actor. It's more about the creative direction and how this character was adapted. Now, Ed in the anime has this delicate, almost cutesy type of personality, always kind of dancing around, obviously doing handstands and everything, but is kind of soft-spoken, likes to giggle, and I know in Ed's first appearance, in the Netflix one, it's a very short segment, so how are you really going to establish a character in so short of time, right? It's very hard to fit the dynamics of Ed's whole being into less than 2 minutes. But again, I feel like not only was the dialogue and the delivery of the lines very strange, like shouting like Pee Wee Herman for almost 2 minutes, I feel like not that much really had to have been said. We would have known it's Ed. We would have gotten that. So Bebop fans, how do you feel about this Netflix live-action adaptation of one of our favorite animes ever, Cowboy Bebop? Please leave your, I know because there's a lot of passionate fans out there, leave your opinions in the comments. Let me know if you agree with these points or if you disagree with anything or everything that I said, or if there's anything that I missed or, you know, other reasons why you like or dislike it, let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video and you want to keep up with the rest of my videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You could also follow me on all the social media networks. I am mostly on Instagram, I'm mostly on TikTok, I'm on other things too, but I barely use them. And I normally sign off with something Power Rangers or Toku related, but I think it only makes sense to say